Billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. First of all, I want to welcome you all for the 10th Annual West ISNA Education Forum in collaboration with CISNA and Aldine Foundation. The topic of this year, this topic is that we've talked about is resiliency, hope, and faith staying connected to the mission. And I wanted to welcome all our educators around the country, really, and thank you for joining us today as the virtual West Coast Education Forum. I'm Azra Naqvi, and I will be your host for this session. I'm the member of the West Coast ISNA Education Forum Program Committee this year, and a board member of ISNA, CISNA, which is the Council of Islamic School of North America. And I'm also the principal of Hadi School of Excellence in Chicago, Illinois. Today, we'll begin with our leadership track that talks about the teacher retention and avoiding burnout by Dr. Douglas Reeves. Just a little bit about Dr. Douglas Reeves. Dr. Reeves is a distinguished author of more than 30 books and more than 100 articles on leadership and organization effectiveness. Twice been named at the Harvard University Distinguished Author Series, Doug was named the Brooke International Laureate for his contributions to education. And Dr. Reeves receives both the Distinguished Service Award from the National Association of Secondary School Principals and the Parents' Choice Award for his writing for children and parents. His career of work is professional learning led to the contribution to the Field Award for National Staff Development Council. For his international work, Dr. Reeves was named the Williams Walker Scholarship by the Australian Council of Education Leadership. So Dr. Reeves will be speaking about the teacher retention, avoiding burnout through building the trust and resilience that will be talked about in his book that Fearless Schools, which was recently published, and I've had an opportunity to read. The national dependency on education, and education depends on more than our effective teaching. So recruiting and retaining our best teachers depend upon respect, feedback, leadership, and there's no single solution, but we can save this profession by working together, the parents, the policymakers, and the teachers. I would like to now welcome Dr. Reeves to talk about the very, very important topic, especially during our pandemic. And I'm very honored to introduce Dr. Reeves to present. Dr. Reeves, please take it away.
Well, thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum, my friends. It's very good to be with you. I've, as you know, traveled extensively around the world, and we all share both the opportunity to really make a difference with our children and raising global citizens. But we can only do that with effective teachers. And this year, the teacher attrition rate is the highest in history. I can tell you nationally that it used to be 8% a year that we would lose. Out of 100 teachers, 8 would leave. This year, it's 25 out of 100. We are losing 25% of our teachers. Looks like we have some echo, so I may have to mute people just a moment here. There we go. And so we have a very high attrition rate. And the question is, how do we try to mitigate that? And I want to share with you some ideas from an article that I wrote called Restoring the Teacher Pipeline and the Profession. We'll make this very interactive because we have a small group. So I'm going to present these 7 ideas for you to consider. And then I'm going to ask you to consider how you might be able to select just 1 or 2 of those ideas and apply them in the schools for which you are responsible. I should also tell you that leaders bear an extraordinary responsibility for this. There's so many things that are not necessarily within our control, but as you'll see in a moment, there are things that you and I do on a daily basis that really can address this teacher retention rate. So let's get the screen up here. And here are the 8 ideas from the article. The first was respect. You know, particularly those of you who have also taught and led schools abroad. I was a teacher in Asia, and I've worked in more than 40 countries. And in the vast majority of those countries, education is very valued. You walk down the street, and if someone knows you're a teacher, You're treated with respect. The closest thing that I could imagine in the United States is like in the South, when sometimes old political issues or even clergymen are regarded with great respect. That's what used to happen with teachers. It doesn't anymore. So one of the most important things as leaders we need to do is to restore respect to the profession. And that includes requiring our students and our parents to treat teachers with respect. Now, the challenge in a private school setting is that sometimes the parents and students feel like they're a customer. And I want to respectfully suggest they are not customers. I know they paid the tuition, and I know the students feel very entitled. But let me tell you the difference between a student and a customer. A customer wants instant gratification. I order something on Amazon, I don't like it, I turn it back. But students are all about delayed gratification. I'm not guessing anyone's age on this call, but I expect at least a few of you, I hope you have, been in the profession long enough that a student came back and thanked you 10 years, 15, maybe more years later for what you did in school. But they never thanked me on the same day. They never said, Mr. Reeves, thank you for that rigorous assignment in today's math class. I know it will help me in the future. It's all about delayed gratification. And I think we have to have some honest conversations with our governing board, with our parents, and with our students, that they are not customers. They're students. And there's a big difference between immediate gratification and delayed gratification. And even when we do things that are difficult and challenging, and we ask students to write work over again, our teachers need respect. That's number one. Number two is feedback. The worst practice in teacher feedback is end-of-year reviews. And when you think about it, that's also the worst practice between teachers and students. You know, punishing a student in May for all the mistakes they did in January would be terrible teaching. And yet sometimes we're in a cycle of annual reviews for adults. And by the way, I've seen this done with school leaders as well, that governing boards do, and it's really toxic. Effective feedback has to be immediate. It has to be specific. It has to let me know how I can get better. To put a fine point on it, I have never seen an educator or a leader get evaluated into better performance. I've seen many of them get coached into better performance when somebody can say, Doug, here are some things that I really want you to improve. I'll be back in your classroom next week to see that you have better engagement, next week to see if you have better classroom management. But a lot of feedback at the end of the year is not helpful. So it's got to be respect. Feedback. Number three is leadership. And colleagues, I would not be doing my job if I do not challenge you. The Gallup organization has done global research across many countries, across many languages. And one consistent finding is that employees do not leave organizations, they leave their managers. It's really on to us. There are a number of research projects that suggest that 70% of the variation in teaching quality is a direct reflection of the quality of the leader. Now, I know you are all servants. You all care very much about your students and your teachers, and I deeply respect that. But I want to honestly suggest you got to take care of yourself. Because if we don't take care of the leaders, then we don't have any opportunity to get better and help the leaders take care of students. And so your needs as leaders must be very important. Next is efficacy. That's a term you see tossed around a lot, but we don't really define what efficacy means very well. Efficacy is the bone deep belief that I influence achievement. So let me give you a practical idea to take away from today's seminar. In just a minute, I'm going to ask you to apply one or two of these, but here's a practical idea. Ask your teachers the following question. What are the causes of student achievement and student failure? What are the causes? And let them write each cause on a separate piece of paper. Give them about 10 or 15 minutes to come up with them, and then gather them all and put them into three separate piles. Pile number one, things I cannot control. The parents, their income, the fact that they're up until 3 o'clock in the morning watching social media, so they're sleep deprived, their nutrition, access to illegal substances. There's all kinds of things that you and I cannot control. That's pile one. Pile two, things I influence. I don't control it, but I influence it. That's like on-time arrival to school. That's like all manner of student engagement. I can't control it, but I can influence it. Pile three, things I as a teacher control and influence. That's the quality of my interaction, the level of engagement, my checks for understanding. all those things of teaching quality that I do. So remember 3 piles. Pile number 1, I can't control or influence. Pile 2, I can influence, I can't control. Pile 3, I control and influence. And I'll tell you what, efficacy is all about focusing our energy on pile 2 and 3. And I hear way too many teachers today say, oh, it's all COVID. It's all the parents. There's nothing I can do. And you can imagine if you just feel impotent, you're going to be ineffective on your job. So forget about pile 1, focus on the things we can control and influence, pile 2 and 3. Autonomy. Now, this is a really hard thing for leaders because on the one hand, we know that people appreciate autonomy. On the other hand, if they have too much autonomy, you don't know if the students are learning. And so there have to be 3 levels of decision making. Number 1 is where teachers have discretion, how to group, how to make an effective hook, how to stop and reteach when a student misses something. Those are all minute-to-minute decisions where teachers have autonomy. Level 2 is how to collaborate. If I've got 3 different 3rd grade classes, I can't have 3 different expectations. They must collaborate with each other on assessments and on curriculum. And level 3, so level 1 was discretion. Level 2 is collaboration. Level 3 is you. I'm going to put the hammer down. You got to do these things. And that's things like safety. We don't vote on safety. That's things like values. And I know you have very strong values in your schools. We're not going to vote on values. So those are decisions that you've already made. So you have discretion, you have collaboration, you have values. The teachers need to know which is which. Because I've been in schools where the leader thinks it's very clear, but the teachers didn't even know they had discretion because the leader didn't tell them. Or conversely, the leaders thought they had all kinds of discretion, and then they found out that they didn't have it. Specify now at the beginning of the year, what's discretion, what's collaboration, and what's top down. Then we have collaboration. Teachers value collaboration if and only if it leads somewhere. So collaboration is not going into one of these meetings and one person talks and everyone else listens. Collaboration is all about inquiry. It's all about deliberation, asking, what can I learn from this meeting that will improve student achievement? And then notice number 7 is compensation. Look, colleagues, I will always argue before your governing boards for better compensation for teachers. But the evidence from the University of Pennsylvania and elsewhere is clear. Money alone isn't enough. There are teachers that were making $25,000 signing bonuses in math and science. They're still leaving. Special education, big bonuses. They're still leaving. Money is important, but it is not enough. You have to have these other things as well to retain the teacher profession. So I want to stop there and give you an opportunity I'll give you a couple of minutes of think time, and then I'll ask you to either in the chat room or if you're willing to unmute yourself and tell me how you might be able to apply just 1 or 2 of these ideas. I'll see you back here in 2 minutes and you can stop the recording if you'd like.
Now, I do want everyone to get a chance to put their questions in the chat, and we can definitely discuss it a little bit later. Were just I'm blown away with all of the information that you went through real quickly. But I wanted to talk about building efficacy because I feel like that's probably the heart of student achievement, is when the teachers believe that the students can achieve. And I like how you talked about the fact that you can think about all the things that you can, all the action items that you can do that kind of going into those what you can control and influence, what you cannot control and cannot influence, and what you can control and influence together. So I think that that's an important thing. And I think we can focus on what we can control, right? We can definitely influence, but we think about what can the teachers do that they can have a direct impact. And I know there's a lot of things that, that we cannot control, especially when they go to home, what home life is all about. And we cannot, it's easily to blame or easy to, say that the students are not doing the work because the parents are not paying attention and this and that. And we can definitely do what we can. We can talk to the parents, we can do what we can, but at the end of the day, when they are with us in the classroom, what can we do then? I think it's important. And I also remember reading through John Hattie's, the research, which said the highest influence is self-efficacy. I think the building efficacy.
You may be interested. I just got a email from John this morning. He and I just finished the book together.
Oh my goodness, really?
Here in Hamilton in Malaysia. And so it's a very international project, and it's all about implementation, because schools oftentimes want to implement things, but they don't create the conditions for successful implementation first. So John has been a very long time friend of mine. You'll see my work cited in his books and his work obviously cited in my books. However, I want to go back to efficacy for just a moment and get really specific, because I think your audience wants, tell me what I can do tomorrow. So let me tell you one thing that I've seen happen in other schools that I know this will push the boundary, but I'm just asking for you to consider it. I realize it will be one of the biggest causes of student failure is missing homework right now. And I taught in a school that had many new arrivals to our country. And my principal would often tell us the word homework may or may not have anything to do with the word home. So he said, you do need to have students practice. That's the reason we assign homework. But the best practice does not happen at home. The best practice happens in the classroom. Think of it like an athletic coach or maybe a music director. They don't send the students home with a football or rugby ball in the backpack and say, practice 30 defense problems at home. They practice with the coach, and the coach gives them immediate feedback. And so I'm seeing more and more math teachers, more and more English teachers, science teachers say, I'm not going to send the practice home. I'm going to get the practice done in class with immediate feedback. And mechanically, what it means is students are out of their desks. Everybody is working on either whiteboards or paper all around the room, and students are doing what they might have done at home. Right then, the teacher immediately gives them feedback. Sometimes there's peer feedback. Sometimes they check with each other. But all the things that they used to do at home, they're now getting done in school. And when those teachers have done that, the failure rate drops dramatically because they're not missing homework. And if they do make a mistake, they're getting it done. And I would just say this, I've interviewed some of these teachers, and they said, it's not just a missing homework that's a problem. It's when students do the homework, who knows? Khan Academy, Google, who knows what's getting the homework done? And so they want to see the work really getting done during the class period. And I know that all of us as educated professionals did homework when we were students. And so we want our students to do it like we did. But the respectful question I would ask is, what percentage of your students are going to be teachers in Hadi school in the future? Probably not 100%. And so if we're going to have students go in other occupations, let's think about what the real world of work is, the real world of college. It's not homework. It's doing work with colleagues. It's getting immediate feedback, respecting feedback, applying feedback, redoing that essay, redoing that lab report, redoing that math proof right then. So that's one way of saying, well, I used to be able to not control homework, but I can control practice and I can get it done. Efficacy is all about moving away from what I cannot control to things that I can control.
I like that, control homework.
And I'm curious, I'll bet your colleagues are probably way ahead of me in some of these ideas. I'll put them back on the board again, because I'll bet some of you have already done some brilliant work in these areas about how you've maybe improved feedback, or you've thought of ways to provide better respect for teachers. So I would like to learn more about that. Respect, obviously, a two-way street. I think we need to show you as our leaders respect also.
I would love someone to participate and give their ideas of, as a leader, what have you been doing? If you look at these seven strategies that Dr. Eva mentioned. Tell me about what is working in your classroom. If anybody can please share out, just unmute and share out, that would be great.
I do want to offer another idea for consideration, because one of the things when I've been interviewing teachers, and as you know, I've worked in private schools and public schools and charter schools and international schools. Last, I have not been able to go back to international schools in the last 2 years, but I will be back as soon as I can. But there's a common theme around the world that I hear, and that's time. Teachers feel that they don't have enough time, and that was true before the pandemic, but it is really true now, because they feel that they lost some learning when students were learning virtually. Pardon me. I know that there's controversy over the term learning loss, but all I can tell you, colleagues, is I'm traveling, at least in the US, and I'm seeing third grade students who don't know their letters, second grade students who don't know how to hold a pencil, sixth and seventh grade students who cannot read their social studies and science textbooks, and ninth grade students who can't add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So teachers are very stressed out over having so much work to make up, and they don't have the time. So let me share with you some ideas on how to get better in time. I do, however, want to make sure that our colleague who just put something in the chat.
Yeah, I just have something. I just have someone who put in the chat, collaboration is highly motivating force with the new learning technology technique within class environment.
Oh, what a brilliant example. Thank you so much. I have to tell you the story. I'm smiling so broadly. There was a 35-year veteran teacher, and she called herself a dinosaur. And she said, I had never used technology until COVID happened. And she spent 3 weeks. She didn't go to seminars. She didn't go to classes. The technology vendors, of course, thinks everything is magic. She was coached by a younger teacher. In 3 weeks, she had created a website. She didn't know what a website was in 2019. And now she has this wonderful interactive website. She could work with her students. She could contact them individually, post everything. And so when we talk about technology, I just want to give us lots of encouragement that let us not stereotype our veteran teachers, because this was a 35-year veteran who had never used technology, but was now using it very, very well. So thank you for that very thoughtful suggestion.
Yeah, I think that technology or COVID has taught us a lot of things, and you know, we always talk about how with difficulty come ease, and we speak that a lot in our even our verses. That although there were many things that that we struggled with, but I think that there were also some things that good that come out of it, and how much we basically catapult ourselves to the future and using technology, but using technology wisely, because technology, although we might say, oh my goodness, technology, I know that parents were struggling with saying that, oh my God, it's too much technology, but we have to understand that technology cannot replace a teacher.
Exactly.
Technology is there to support the teacher's teaching, but it absolutely cannot replace the teacher. So
thank you for saying that. I was interviewed on the media, and they said, what's the biggest lesson of COVID? And the biggest lesson of COVID is that technology won't replace a teacher. And I don't care if it's 50 years from now and the technology, we'll have holograms there. We learned personal relationships, and the value of a teacher is still there. And the schools, by the way, during the shutdown that I saw really come back and do well, the teachers, you couldn't go home visits inside, but they were literally on the sidewalk, to be outside to still maintain the relationship. They used old-fashioned telephones where students could hold a picture of their teacher and talk to them while they were on the phone. So please, colleagues, do not underestimate the value of personal relationships. So I thank you so much for saying that. That was the biggest lesson, I think, of COVID. And also, some technology worked, some of it was terrible. And I want to give you as leaders encouragement that if you spent some money on technology and it's not working, please be willing to pull the plug, admit a mistake. I think it's really mature and helpful when a leader says, I tried this, I thought it was going to work, but it was a mistake. Because when a leader is willing to say, I made a mistake, then that allows teachers and students to say, I made a mistake. I'm not going to get punished for it. I learned from it. I know one leader who publishes what he calls oopsgrams. He says, here's my biggest mistakes of the last month. I want to share them so we all learn from them. I think that's a very professional and confident thing to do. And sometimes we place our leaders on such a pedestal that we think they never make a mistake. If you're willing to admit some, and we all made them for goodness sake in technology, then admitting those will go a long ways to creating the psychological safety where a teacher can say, yes, I made a mistake too, and a student can make a mistake. The example I always use is babies learning to walk. If you go, you can YouTube, or maybe your own family experience tells you, they made a lot of mistakes as they learned to walk. They bump into things, but if they were humiliated every time they made a mistake, they'd never learn to walk. In fact, they'll fall down and they'll kind of laugh about it. They pick themselves up, they do it again, they fall down again. That to me is the metaphor for what I want our teachers to be able to do. Make a mistake, admit that we made them, then come back. I want our students to do that. And by the way, just one thing before I go into the issue of time. I know many of you visit classrooms. I just published an article in this month's Educational Leadership in the December issue, and it's called The Engagement Illusion. And here's what happens. We say, oh, the principal's coming down the hall, and I see you coming down the hall, so I'm the teacher. Everything better be shipshape. Students heads down, fingers on the keyboard, writing. I'm only going to call on students who have the answer because I want to be perfect for my principal. Colleagues, that is not a learning environment. The learning environment is when I would be courageous enough to call on students randomly. They're going to make some mistakes in front of you, in front of the leader. They'll learn from those mistakes. You will see a better learning environment when the teacher is courageous enough to make a mistake, to have students make mistakes, than the illusion that everything is perfect. And I fear too many times when they see the principal walk in, oh my gosh, it must be perfect. And no, it doesn't.
Something that I did in the beginning of the year as a principal is to let the teachers know that I be walking in and out. And I think what helped for me is to create that relationship in the beginning and set that expectation that I'm going to be coming in and out of the classroom on a daily basis, not necessarily to pinpoint or find faults in anything, but to be able to have that third eye, and maybe sometimes ask the teachers, what do you want me to observe that you want to improve? Because the whole idea is to be able to have that cycle of improvement. And by my bi-weekly meetings that I have with my teachers, we discuss, okay, this is what's happening. This is what I'm challenged with. And I said, well, if that's a challenge, what's your goal? And once we develop that goal, we basically have that as a way for me to come and observe, to say, did that work? That strategy that you've implemented, how did that work? And how I can bring back as a post observation, and not as a way for evaluation, but more of a feedback. So that really brings me back to your second comment that talks about improved feedback. And I think that's really interesting how you mentioned how you give an analogy of the feedback that we do. We expect the child to learn and immediately give them a result without giving them time to progress or give them time to it's kind of go hand in hand about give them time to improve, to let them make mistakes and learn from them.
And again, I know your audience wants to be very specific and have things that they can take away. Let me tell you another thing I've seen teachers do to get better feedback. Instead of a unit test that has 20 or 30 or 40 items, I've seen them do mini assessments, literally 2 items. I'm going to focus on the Pythagorean theorem. I'm going to focus on main idea. I'm going to focus on reading a map, whatever the case is. And 2 questions, and they give it right then. They give feedback immediately. It's just like an athletic coach. It's just like a music teacher. They give feedback immediately right then. It's one of the best things that they can do. Speaking of coaching, I wanted to ask you, do most of your schools have some sort of athletic team or other extracurricular activities?
Yes, we are a small school, but we do have a coach, which is our PE teacher, who is basically coaching in our team, a small team that we have. So we do have a coach that, and we do PE, twice a week.
Right. And do they play against other schools?
Yes, this COVID situation this year, we're trying to, working with maybe having inter Islamic school competitions going on, most likely starting next year. But we did it prior to the COVID situation.
And what about things like debate or theater or other activities like that?
Mostly basketball.
Okay.
And we also have debate as well. Yes.
Excellent. So here's all I wanted to say. I've heard a number of teachers and administrators say that student discipline has not been as good this year as it should be in the past. And one study that I did related these extracurricular activities, and that includes football, basketball, debate, rugby, whatever you have. When the biggest gain was when students went from 0 activities to 1 or 2, dramatic improvement in attendance, in academic achievement, and behavior. Now, the problem is, who do the coaches recruit? The students who are already good athletes, the people who are already involved in 1 or 2 things. And the club advisors go after people who are already in 1 or 2 clubs. But if you want to really have a leverage point for the entire school, find those students involved in nothing and say, come join the debate team, come join the drama club, come join the basketball club. I'm agnostic as to which one they choose, but I think that peer group is very important, because the peer group will say, hey, you missed practice yesterday, we needed you. We need to have you here. And having a peer say that is better than 100 lectures from me saying that. I see that we have more comments in the chat room, so let me respond to those.
Yeah, so I think Sumaila Khan had mentioned, I think she mentioned about the technology comment that we made, that true productive tech learning or collaboration means when a student is assigned a game to build concepts such as Quizlets, quizzes, or Kahoot, creating a blog, Canva, infograph, or a few good tools that we can integrate.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I have another comment about said by Mona, who respecting each student's level. Start a rule that everyone is in class is here to learn. So the whole class with the teacher leading work together towards success. So each one gets new ideas.
Yeah, a lot of schools have mission statements. One of the favorite ones that I heard was everybody learns every day. And by everybody, they meant every student learns, every teacher learns, every leader learns every day. And I think I love the way that you expressed it, that you expect learning to happen by every single student. And that means, by the way, nobody passive. I hope this is not an issue in your schools, but I was in a school last week. They had students with earplugs in, they had students with their heads in the desk. To me, that is completely unacceptable. I hope it is in your schools as well, where you can really have a higher level of expectation and discipline. Before we run out of time, if I may please just say a few words about time. One of the things that teachers have complained to me about around the country is time. So let me just ask respectfully this question. Would we have the same school for this year, 21-22, as we had before COVID for 2019? And I'm seeing a lot of schools that do. I said, how much time did you allocate toward literacy in 3rd grade in 2019? Well, 90 minutes, they'll say. How much time do you have for literacy today? 90 minutes. Colleagues, if there's no change in schedule, no change in time allocation, that is the illusion that COVID never happened. Now, I know some of your students probably did fine with distance learning. The national evidence is about 21% or so of students actually thrived with distance learning and computers. That leaves almost 80% that did not. And so I really want to, if I am your 3rd grade teacher and I come to you respectfully and I say, my students are not reading, my students are trying to catch up, I've got at least 2 years of learning, I need more time. I need you as my leader to be able to give that to me. Similarly, I was a mathematics teacher, and if I've got students who can't add, subtract, multiply, and divide, I can teach them algebra, but I can't do it in the traditional 1 period a day. So I'm asking you as my leaders to be open-minded to the teacher who wants to do the right thing, but they need more time, because when they don't get it, all they tend to do is just talk, deliver, and hope that the students will catch up at home. And that's not happening. And that's what's leading to a very high level of frustration. So that's one idea. A second idea is staff meetings. I have interviewed principals, and this one woman, Miss Campson, I thought she was very interesting. I asked her, Miss Campson, why is it that you have time for things like common assessments, collaborative scoring, common lesson plan design, and everybody else in your area says, well, I don't have time for those things. And she said, because I haven't done a staff meeting for 3 years. Now, she still has staff meetings. They're in the contract, people come together, but she never uses them to make announcements. She never uses them to listen to teachers complain about parents or students or anything else. It's all about learning. So the announcements are in writing, and she uses every staff meeting for a very specific purpose, like assessment design or collaborative scoring. Are any of your schools organized as professional learning communities, as PLCs?
I know that we have been watching the PLC Plus model.
Okay.
That asks the questions where the students, where are we here, and how are we, moving learning forward. So we do have a time that we've set aside for students, or basically, since we are one grade school, we have our kindergarten, first and second grade student, teachers sit together, and the, third to eighth graders teachers sit together and do some collaborative time.
Excellent. So let me just offer, and I'm agnostic about the name of it, PLC, PLC Plus. Vendors make too big a deal over that. But let me just tell you, the heart of any professional learning community is learning, assessment, intervention, enrichment. And the reason I mention this is that everybody on this call is busy also. It's not just the teachers that are busy, all the leaders are busy, and you're too busy to read minutes of a meeting. So I would encourage you not to have people send you minutes of their meetings, but rather a 4-line email that corresponds to what the PLCs are all about: learning, assessment, intervention, enrichment. That's it. Just a 4-line email: learning, assessment, intervention, enrichment. And maybe they'll say, well, gee, leader, we didn't get around to assessment. All we did was lesson plan design. Okay. But if that happens for the next 3 or 4 meetings, that's a problem. And that to me says you need to be at that meeting, because over the course of time, they need to get to all 4 of those core PLC issues: learning, assessment, intervention, and enrichment. So you can make those much better. The next one that'll save time is power standards. Can I ask what academic standards do most of your schools use?
We use mostly the Common Core state standards, but the NGSS next generation state standards as well.
Okay.
And the 4C and the 3 Cs for the social studies.
So I'm very familiar with all of those. And here's what I can say. I did one of the first reviews of those when they first came out years ago. They're all designed for people who need 1 year of learning. And the problem is most of our students need more than 1 year of learning. And so there are simply too many standards in the Common Core, in NGSS. And so power standards say, let us identify that subset of standards that are most important to have students go to the next level of learning. And when teachers try to cover everything, the students are not learning more. It's just cover, deliver, and the students aren't learning it. Now, it's beyond the scope of today's discussion, but I can recommend to you the process of power standards that not only narrows down the focus, but also identifies how do you assess those standards and how do you have students learn them. And finally, as I already mentioned, mini assessments. So those are some practical ways to save time and also show respect for teachers.
We talked about power standards. Is there a specific place where we can, what are the power standards that we can identify and have the teachers make that selection?
It's really important that there's a process that my colleagues use that works with teachers in seminars to take them through to identify and develop. And you may want to have a consortium of different schools, so you can have several 3rd grade teachers in the room all saying, what do we want for 3rd grade? What's most important to get them to 4th grade? So it's a multi-step process that goes all the way from not only identifying what standards are most important, but also they ask teachers in the next grade. If I'm teaching 3rd grade, the relevant question is asking a 4th grade teacher, what do I need to do this year to send students to you with confidence and success? And that is especially true in the transition between grade 5 and 6 and 8 and 9. Because what I see is, particularly as students go into high school, 8th grade teachers are going faster and faster and faster, saying, I have to get them ready for high school. And yet I said, have you asked a high school teacher? Because the high school teacher never says cover everything. They say you have covered the most important things to get them ready for high school, and they resolve the standards paradox. You also have to have students who can take notes, who can ask questions, who can advocate for themselves. There's all kinds of psychological things that they need as well.
That's wonderful. I think that that is almost like a two street where we not only have to take care of the academics, but also their social emotional needs and their skills, those foundational skills that are so important for them to learn and be able to do. And, you know, not just focus on this, just the getting all A's or getting the highest score, but also to be able to do the other things that are, you know, delayed interest gratification, for example, be it school on time, and, you know, learning things that are that's more important to collaborate with those with your peers to do the project-based learning in those project-based learning collaborative times. So I think that's probably one of the, it goes hand in hand basically with that.
Well, I'm afraid our time has rapidly evaporated. It's wonderful to be with you. I hope that we'll have the opportunity someday, inshallah, to be together.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reeve. Is there any other questions or any other comments that we want to talk that mention? Anybody want to mention? Please feel free to share it out. I think that I've done a lot. I'm going to have to come back and look at the webinar again, Dr. Reeve, to kind of really capture all the things that you mentioned today, especially those seven points that you mentioned about the article, which is boosting relationship, which is extremely important. Boosting respect to the teachers, which is so important. We want to give them that respect that any other profession, but this is probably the most important profession that we need to give that respect, because we are the ones who are creating those leaders for the future. And I think that is extremely important. Improving feedback also is something that I felt is important to realize that that as you mentioned, effective feedback has to be immediate. It has to be grounded in what the students are learning and progress. Strengthening leadership, I think it's also another thing that you mentioned. I like the fact that you talked about the Gallup poll, that you mentioned about coaching, and that's very important as well. Building efficacy, I believe, like I mentioned to you, I think I love how you kind of gave an idea about the three piles, that we should be able to even do in our staff meetings. I think the three piles that we have, all the things that you're doing, and out of all the things that you're doing, what can you actually control and influence and work on that? So I love that point, and also about homework, because it's not really about homework, it's about the practice that I felt it's so important that that's the reason why we give homework, because we want them to kind of relearn, practice. But if we find that there is difficulty in the children's home that we cannot control, well, why don't we just utilize the time? And actually, I was just talking to a teacher even today that we had some issues with the student who's not able to do his homework, but who is in aftercare. Well, there you go. The students in aftercare, we can actually have them practice while they're in school in aftercare before they go out and play. So it's basically spot on about what we're talking about. Allowing autonomy and fostering collaboration that we just talked about. It's extremely important that that we as teachers have to collaborate and learn from each other and teach the students as well. And I love the fact that how you talked about discretion, collaboration, and I believe you said something about non-negotiable. I'm not sure if it's
top down. In college, it's okay to make a leadership decision. If you're my leader, I don't want to vote on everything. I don't want to vote on safety, and I don't want to vote on values. Every one of your schools is grounded in Islamic values, and we're not voting on that. So just tell me what the rules are. But there are other areas where I do have discretion. I just need to know the difference.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Reeve. I think this was an amazing, thought-provoking, program and presentation. Again, thank you so much. I appreciate that, and I hope to always learn from you, and I always do. And I'll also encourage everybody else to go ahead and buy the book, because I actually just recently brought it from Amazon and just went pages, and I just love about the resilience and trust and resilience that Dr. Reeves so heavily focused on, and it's going to be really helpful. So Dr. Reeves, again, thank you so much.
It's my great pleasure. And I put my contact information up there. It's entirely okay for you to share my contact with everyone. So if they want to correspond with me personally, I'm happy to engage in a conversation with them.
Absolutely. And is you said you put it in the chat or?
No, I put it on the screen just a moment ago. I'll do it one more time.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
There.
Creative leadership. Yes, definitely. Well, again, thank you so much, Dr. Reeve. I appreciate your time and effort, and I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for participating in this enlightening webinar. And I know I have several questions in the chat, and I wanted to be able to read that out. I do have someone who I think Farah, if you can, I'm gonna say, if I can ask to unmute yourself and share out. I think you can unmute yourself. Farha has raised your hand.
Yes.
You're welcome to unmute and share it out, Sister Farah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Azra and Dr. Reeves, for the wonderful session. I was trying to unmute myself. I was not able to do so earlier. So again, you've echoed everybody's sentiments and thanking and appreciating and recapturing all the discussion that happened. I posted my question in the chat. I would like to learn how we can increase more instructional time for someone who asks for it. Now we have the other subject constraints as well. Math has to have 5 classes because it's also an in-depth subject. So does ELA, so does social studies. So how do you carve extra time? Is there any strategy that anybody has that we can share the instructional time? Because the periods are allocated per subject for the whole week. And unfortunately, not much can be done in this area. Because it was clearly mentioned that if an ELA teacher asks for it, the readers should be open to give it. And yes, I am approached by my teachers with that request, but I feel constrained, how you can allocate more instructional time.
I think that's a really good point, because especially for the fact that during this pandemic, as one of the information that Dr. Reeve was mentioning, that how are we adjusting our schedule, our master schedule, based on the pandemic, based on what it was pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. And because of the limited time, we are looking to different ways to organize our master schedule and allow the students to, or the teachers to collaborate. And one of the things I was just mentioning to you, that John Hattie's book, where he discussed the research-based strategy, where collective efficacy is one of the biggest strategies that works well, for our teachers. So we need to have to find time, and I would love for others to unmute themselves and maybe share out how do you allow that master schedule to allow that PLC time into the schedule, and how do you configure the different grade level teams.
Okay, this is Farah again. So we do have PLCs built in our schedule. We have strategically made our teacher schedule in a way that all second grade teachers or third grade teachers are free at the same time during a certain period of the week. So they can do their PLC meetings at that time when they have their planning time together. So that is already occurring at our campus. And I already mentioned in my chat as well, it's a very powerful practice. It helps teachers align as well as share ideas and learn from each other. And sometimes we even pose them a focused question for them to discuss and grow further in that specific. Sometimes we even assign them an article to read and then discuss and see how they can implement those strategies. So that is occurring. Like I said, my question was more about adjusting instructional time and keeping everybody happy. I guess there is no rabbit anybody's hat right now. This is something you have to just scratch your head and see and how, we can help those teachers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any question or any comments they would like to? I think you can unmute yourself right now. If you can try to unmute yourself. I believe I deselected the unmute button. So let's see. Okay, go ahead.
I'm Sumaira Wahidi, and I have been a teacher for some time, and I used to like teaching because there was a connection with each child, and we had the time to kind of really, the instruction time was there. And instruction time is not only the instruction time, but socializing time also for the teacher and the child to connect and, kind of work together. Now, because of all the standards and documentation, it is getting so difficult. It's just like we go there to kind of document and the progress of each child. The thing that is lost, I feel that the connection of the children and the teacher and, really enjoying the teaching part and the learning part is diminishing as we kind of go into this documentation and too much. I think there has to be some documentation, but not the documentation that we have to do now. And the children learn, but it should be a whole child that we are teaching. It should not be just the instruction part, but as a whole child. We have to see children and their social development also. I feel that I don't like to teach now. This is my 26th year as a teacher, which is like really, it just takes the joy of teaching with all the documentation and all the red tape that is there, that you have to treat each child and then you have to do so many assessments. And I'm just like so lost. I don't want to be a teacher, though I like teaching, but I don't know where the standards are of, documentation and the instruction time.
Just tell me a little bit about when you said documentation, are you referring to more of the lesson planning and assessing the students and keeping the records of their grade level and then organizing in that way? Is that where you're relying as documentations? Because we need to, yes, there is a, and I know that not all schools are wanting to see the lesson plans for their teachers, and some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them would like to see the scope and sequence and the project planning guide and pacing guide for that matter. So I'm wondering, how does other manage to the fine line between too much documentation and give the teachers enough time for actual instructions?
One reason that I became a Montessori teacher is because there is less documentation than the, traditional teaching, that each child kind of progresses on their own pace. So, just to document for each child, it just becomes too much documentation. The joy of teaching a Montessori class is to see them achieve. It's just like in any other Montessori classes, there is less documentation. They don't even have report cards. But believe me, the children do very well. I have 4-year-olds who are doing multiplication. I have 5-year-olds who have memorized, some of them have memorized the times table. And it is just because, I love teaching and they love learning. I'd learn from them and they really enjoy teaching. When they're really enjoying the learning part. And, I have limited myself in documentation. The requirements of the school is that you have to, document more. Just see each child, see where they are. The parents are so much into, okay, how did my child do? Did he have a BM? Did he eat well? Did he do this? just trust us. If there's a problem, we will kind of contact you. The parents are so much into, documentation. They want to see everything that the child does. They are children. They will learn. If there's a problem, we will, the testing is there, but the daily documentation that has to be done is just like, overwhelming. Maybe it's for me, maybe it's not for the other teachers. Maybe everybody is kind of doing better than what I'm doing. But for me, I love teaching. I love the children to progress. I don't hold my children back. If they can read, my 4-year-olds are reading. My 5-year-olds have a score of, second grade, third grade reading levels. But I limit myself in documentation. I don't want to tell the parents that they can do so well. And their writing skills, they are writing 2-3 pages of, story writing because they love learning. But I have limited myself of the documentation. I don't like to document. This is me being an, older person, older school of thought, this is just, maybe it's just me.
Thank you so much for sharing, Sister Samara. I'm wondering if anybody have any follow-up comment about Sister Samara's concern. Does anybody have anything to add to that, or have anything to talk about? One thing that going back to Montessori, I wanted to say is that having a running record of this, with the teachers, with the students, would be a good idea, especially when you're talking about Montessori. There are so many materials that the students are allowed to, present or they're independently able to go and choose the material by themselves. And as a teacher, it is a good idea to have that record, to see the running record, at least to see which material the child is able to are drawn towards, and which of them the child is able to or we need to encourage the child to use. So those are the running record that is important to carry on and have. But I'm wondering, does anybody else have any comments on that one? I also wanted to maybe share the specific. I'm just wondering if I actually have post out the information about Dr. Douglas Reeves, because he had insisted me to present this to you again, his email and phone number. And if you have any additional questions, you're welcome to address or to him directly as well. I have another question. I know that Dr. Reeves presented those 7 strategies. I'm wondering, does anybody have any questions about that? If not, I wanted to thank you all for participating in this enlightening presentation with Dr. Reeves. And I just see the Sister Sophia has posted the survey for today's webinar. I appreciate if you can please participate and fill this out. I really appreciate it. I'll just post it one more time. Does anybody have any another point they want to talk about or discuss? I know that Dr. Reeves had also talked about engagement, and time was one of the biggest thing that one of the concerns that we as educators are having. And I'm wondering, how do you manage time, and how do you allow that flexibility with the teachers, especially during this pandemic? We know that a lot of teachers are struggling, and with the hybrid learning, and with that, how do you how are other teachers, other leaders managing time with the teachers? If you guys can unmute yourself and share out, that would be great.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, Sister Mumtaz.
Yes, I just wanted to share with you that Minarat Academy has a very nice program called Montessori Record Express for record keeping in the Montessori area. The curriculum is extensive, so we depend on the record keeping system to administrate us, and we are able to record on a weekly basis everything the child works with, whether the child is being presented, practicing, and has already mastered it. So we've had wonderful years of that experience. So we are not burdened with a memory pool. We do that we jot down on a notebook on a daily basis, and on a weekly basis, we put it into a record keeping system. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you so much, Sister.
You're welcome.
Does anybody have any other question or concerns or anything they wanted to share out based on the Dr. Reeves' presentation? If not, I would like to thank you for joining in. I just wanted to say that Dr. Reeves' presentation is or recording is available, inshallah. So whoever joined or whoever registered, inshallah, will be getting that the Dr. Reeves recording, inshallah, soon. So again, thank you so much for participating, and inshallah, we will see you tomorrow. I just wanted to also mention that tomorrow we will be having, and from the leadership track, Dr. Anthony Muhammad will be presenting his leadership, transformational leadership from his book that he wrote, Transformation Leadership. So inshallah, we will see you tomorrow, inshallah. And you're welcome to join the next session we will be having soon.